But many of these fires in August are much larger than we ever deal with in the course of a typical year. And so fires are not created equal. It's a very challenging situation out there. More than 50,000 acres have been burned. And just to put that into perspective another way, that's about 75 square miles or so of property that has burned. And more than half of the 50,000 acres, in fact, this morning we were briefed that the footprint still is over 32,000 acres in the Tiger Island fire in Beauregard Parish. And at its maximum, it was 38,000 acres. Hot and dry conditions are going to continue for the remainder of this week. We are in a red flag situation in Louisiana, meaning there are very serious and severe threat of fires because of the conditions on the ground, and that's because of the heat, the relatively low humidity, but also because of the lack of rain that we have in the forecast, and then gusting winds, which today, especially in southwest Louisiana, will be gusting 15 to 20 miles per hour, and then tomorrow 10 to 15 miles per hour. And one of the reasons we wanted to have this press conference is to give everybody an update on what the situation is. But because there has been a little precipitation in the state over the last couple of days, there are many people who think that, well, the drought conditions are over, we can return to behavior as normal. That is not the case. We still have a very severe drought in Louisiana. And the little bit of the precipitation that we've had, especially in southwest Louisiana, it's gone now. And the conditions are coming back that really present tremendous challenges for us, because there are hundreds, literally hundreds of hot spots across Louisiana today, and all it takes is a gust of wind for that fire to flare back up, and then if the wind continues to blow, it is going to travel very quickly. And there's a lot that we can't control. I mean, we're praying for rain and for easing of these drought conditions, but at the end of the day, we can't make it rain. We can't change the wind, the temperature, the relative humidity, but we can control what we do and what we don't do. And I'm reminding everyone of the statewide burn ban. We have, and you're going to get the numbers here in just a little bit, but we have thousands of people from all over the state and out of state. We have just this huge, robust effort. We don't need to create more work for ourselves and put more property and, more importantly, more lives at danger. So please, don't burn anything. There'll be a time for it. It's not now. If you're going to smoke, please properly dispose of your cigarettes. Secure your chains on vehicles so that you're not dragging those down the street and creating sparks. And then this weekend is Labor Day. We know that typically involves a lot of cookouts and barbecues, especially with the return of football and with dove season opening. And I'm asking that people not engage in barbecuing and so forth outside where a fire can start. Let's be patient. Let's not create more work for firefighters across the state of Louisiana. We just need to work together to try to prevent what is already a very serious situation from becoming even worse than it is today. I also want to make sure that everybody understands just the scope of the response, at least in part. The National Guard has 452 service members supporting current operations, including soldiers from out of state, particularly Oklahoma and Tennessee. Altogether, with the requests that we have made from other states, we have people from 7 states on 10 different missions, but those states are Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Tennessee, New York, Alabama, and Ohio. We have volunteer firefighters from all over the state who are helping in southwest Louisiana, where virtually all of those fire departments are volunteers. And these people have been engaged and doing heroic work, but they need some assistance, an opportunity to rest, and so forth. 56 departments from around the state have responded to that, and we're very thankful for them. We also have law enforcement officers who are out enforcing the burn ban, writing citations, and you would be surprised, I think you would be surprised at the number of citations that have been written just in the last 2 days from people who are violating the burn ban all over the state, but including in the area of southwest Louisiana where we're dealing with the most serious fires. And of course that's happening at the local level too, with local agencies involved in enforcing the burn ban. I do want people to know that as far as resources go, food assistance is a concern to a lot of people in the impacted areas. If you need assistance with nutrition, encouraging you to dial 211, and you can ask for information about meals, food pantries, and other resources. In just a few minutes, Secretary Ricks is going to come up and talk about SNAP households that have been affected by the fires, and what that typically means is that they were without electricity for some period of time, 24 hours or more, and they had to evacuate or whatever, and how they can request assistance with their SNAP benefits being replaced. I'm going to encourage everybody to make sure that you're paying attention to the fires and to your local government, and if they come out with a evacuation notice, that you please adhere to that, and any other information that they give you, or any other announcements that they make in terms of what you should or should not do, and asking you to, if you witness any hazardous situations on the road, you can call star 577 and report it to the nearest state police troop. That's star 577. For road closures, which as of today we don't have road closures in Louisiana related to the fires, but there are a number of road closures, but that can change at any minute. You can go to 511la.org for real-time information on road closures. Obviously, in the event of emergency, you can always call 911 or the Department of Ag and Forestry 24-hour emergency hotline, which is 855-452-5323. I do want to thank Commissioner Strain, Forester Wade Dubé, and all of the folks at Ag and Forestry who've just done a tremendous job. Yesterday, we were able to go to DeRitter in Beauregard Parish and meet with Steve Parrish, who works for the U.S. Forest Service, and he's in charge of the red team that was sent in to really take command and control of the Tiger Island fire. He was extremely complimentary of all of the efforts that were made by the people in the state up until the time that they arrived on the scene, and how those efforts really did set the stage for them to be as successful as they have been to date on that fire. It is not luck. It is not mere happenstance that we have not yet had a fatality connected to the wildfires. And yes, we have had a number of structures that have been destroyed, but when you look at the property damage, those numbers too are very small. Now, if your home was destroyed, if you're one of the 6 people in Beauregard Parish, for example, and your home was destroyed, this wildfire could not have been worse for you and your family, and we absolutely get that. But when you know the seriousness of the fires and how fast they were racing and so forth early on, the fact that only 6 homes have been totally destroyed is remarkable, and it's because of the work that was done by local firefighters, by those first responders, and certainly by the ag and forestry people who take charge of forest fires in Louisiana. So as the commissioner comes up, I do want to thank him and his team for doing such a good job. But I don't want anybody to interpret my remarks as thanking him for a job well done, because we're still very much in the effort here. These fires are not all contained, and they're not all controlled, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of hot spots that are still smoldering small fires that at any moment, with these winds and the return of these red flag conditions, can flare up and pose additional challenges to life and property. So without any further ado, Commissioner?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning? Good to see you, and thank you for being here. Governor, I want to publicly thank you, your team, and all of your leadership for everything that you are doing, as well as everyone coordinated, working together. To put this in perspective, my entire Office of Forestry is 155 personnel. We have over 1,200 people now fighting fires. So everyone coming together has augmented our, initially our local fire departments, our volunteer fire departments, Department of Ag and Forestry, fought with everything that we have, and then as we've reached out, everyone else has come to our assistance. I want to thank you for the aircraft. I want to thank the Fire Marshal's Office. In 1924, fire started. 5 million acres burned. 5 million. And then in 1942, it was 1.2 million. And so we are holding the line, and we're going to continue to hold the line and stop this. We have unprecedented conditions. I'm going to repeat that. Unprecedented conditions. And that's why we cannot allow this burn ban to be dropped. Everyone must adhere to this. Yesterday, an additional 12 citations. The day before, 20 citations. We continue to make arrests. We have a unique set of circumstances. We have a drought situation such that I haven't seen in my lifetime. We're also dealing with the aftermaths of Hurricane Laura, Delta, and Ida, with a lot of extra fuel on the ground. And if you look what's happening, if you see the high pressure system, which drops the humidity, and then what happens, even though we have spotted areas of rain, what we're getting in southwest Louisiana all the way, we've got to be in a capacity where we can get to you and get it out. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dan Wallace, State Fire Marshal, and our message is clear. And to reiterate what the mayor and what the commissioner has said, we're asking, don't burn anything. Do not use any type of open flame outside. Think of alternatives. Think of the situations where you may patronize your local businesses if you're thinking about having a barbecue, and go for those tailgate parties and buy prepackaged meals, prepackaged party packs. Think about situations where you might be using candles for some sort of outdoor event. Purchase the flameless candles. Some of this is common sense, but some of these things, as the commissioner was saying, we're in times that are unprecedented. I've been in this business a very long time, and I've never seen anything like this. Some of our teams were faced with Saturday a fire line that was 6 miles long, flames that were 300 feet tall. So we asked the citizens of the state of Louisiana, when you do get that evacuation order, whether it be mandatory or voluntary, take it seriously. You won't be able to, there's a very good possibility you won't be able to outrun the flames. There's a very good possibility you may be trapped. So we are asking people to take it extremely seriously. We are asking you to listen to all of the professionals and heed the warning. Most of all, I want to thank the men and women who serve the state of Louisiana as our firefighters, regardless of whether they're forestry firefighters or municipal firefighters, volunteer firefighters, career firefighters. They have been doing an wonderful job, and we've been forced to bring teams from out of state from our partner agencies, and we want to thank those agencies for coming out. Luckily, unfortunately, we've been praying, and we have not had any firefighter fatalities. We've had a few injuries, but they've been minor, and we're very thankful for that. So again, please support your communities, support your state, support your neighbors in abiding by the burn ban, and help us to mitigate this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. I want to make sure that we are addressing those who are in need of food assistance. And in that sense, I would like to reiterate what the governor said earlier about all of us understanding that we can call 211 at any time to find out about resources in our communities, and that includes food resources. I would like to also specifically address those of us in our neighborhoods who are SNAP recipients, to remind you that this federal program has a very generous replacement policy, that if food that has been lost, food that has been purchased with SNAP benefits has been lost for some reason, including power outage for more than 24 hours, the recipient can make an application for food replacement benefits. We are always open to receive those applications when there has been food loss, and in this specific case, we want to make sure that those who have been impacted by these fires, who have lost power for as many as 4 days, to remind you that you have 10 days to make that application for replacement benefits. So many of you who were affected were impacted even up until just yesterday when power has been restored. So be mindful of the 10-day window to apply for replacement benefits. And there are 3 ways to apply. One is online, one is via mail or fax, and one is in person at our offices. So we have put information on our website. There's a flyer that can be passed around, and there's also information anyone can at any time. Again, if you've forgotten anything that I've said and you don't know where to go, call 211. They'll be able to give you this information. But also you can call directly to the 888 LA Help You number that is always available 24/7 for those of us who need services from DCFS. So thank you so much for this opportunity. For those who are working to feed people on the ground, and always for the food pantries and food banks, we are so very grateful for the partnership. Let's look around at people, make sure that they have what they need. You can call 211 for yourself and for a neighbor. Thank you.
Okay, we will take some questions now.
For 100% clarity, are barbecues now part of the burn ban, or is it just something
No.
you're strongly discouraging?
No, so the burn ban speaks for itself, and that's why I use the word that I'm asking people not to do the barbecues, whether, it's associated with a dove hunt. Like, I love the dove hunt. I've done it many times, and they're always with the barbecue associated with that, or a tailgate or whatever. We do know that historically a lot of fires start that way, and we just can't have more fires than the absolutely necessary and so forth. And so that's why we're asking for that. I think that's the guidance that's going out in the higher education community, for example, for on-campus activities related to football, tailgating, and so forth. So we are requesting that. That is not technically part of the burn ban. But we're asking for people to comply with that.
Governor, you indicated since the onset of this emergency that in terms of a regular occurrence, wildfires aren't in the wheelhouse of our emergency response. And yesterday in DeRidder, you sort of hinted that that's something that needs to be addressed moving forward. Can you elaborate on that, what that looks like in terms of personnel, equipment, et cetera, and what might be left up to your successor to continue that work?
Well, the Commissioner of Ag and Forestry did, and he would tell you again, we fight wildfires often, but they typically are much smaller, and they're easier to gain control of and to contain because they typically burn lower to the ground, slower, and so forth, because we have moisture. But when you have the highest temperatures recorded for the longest period of time without the rainfall in these drought conditions, with all the fuel that's on the ground, by the way, partly because of Hurricanes Laura, Delta, and Ida that knocked over timber that hasn't yet rotted. So you don't just have the standing timber, you've got all the deadfall out there and all the normal underbrush. That's all fuel. And so we have this very volatile, dangerous situation right now. I happen to believe that this is probably the new normal. And not that this will happen to this degree every year, but it's going to happen to some degree more frequently than it has in the past. And so while we have a wonderful team at the state level and working with our federal partners, state agencies working together, and state agencies working with local first responders, and I was able to thank all of our folks in the Overwatch room yesterday because this is a disaster response. It's unlike those that we typically engage in, but because we all know one another and we communicate well and we know how to plan and so forth, we've been able to adapt and to, I think, effect a good response here. But to answer your question, going forward, we're going to, just like we drill on floods and tornadoes and primarily hurricanes, we're going to have to start adding to that wildfire scenarios and bring in the U.S. Forest Service to help us because they have so much experience and expertise in this area. I happen to believe that the commissioner is probably going to be, I bet he's shaking his head yes right now, he's going to be asking the legislature for more money and more personnel so that we have more teams out there with dozers. He probably needs his own aircraft, the Super Scoop aircraft or the single engine air tankers, the seats, or whatever it is that he needs, because we're going to have to respond more frequently and get off to a more robust response quicker than we were able to do this time. And so that's something we're going to do here at GOSEP. We will be organizing all of that. And the first thing, and we always do this with every disaster response, we will get together and do an after-action review when this is done. And it is not done. But when it is, and we will figure out what we did right, what we did wrong, how do you improve, what best practices are out there, invite people from other states to come in and share their experience with us, invite the U.S. Forest Service. So this is a new normal that we have to be prepared for to a degree, quite frankly, that we just haven't had to do in the past.
I don't want to haunt this. But I'm wondering if you all are at a point where you can assess, how much of this acreage lost is, say, commercial timber acreage versus private property, public lands, just to get an idea of, what exactly we're losing.
Well, the overwhelming majority is forest land. And you have the Kisatchie National Forest and the Ida Fire, which is really the one that's least contained at the moment. And then the biggest fire is Tiger Island in Beauregard. This is predominantly forest land, pine trees, pine plantations, and so forth. And the challenge with it is as we mentioned before, all the fuel that's down there in addition to the trees. But early on in this effort, these pine trees were catching fire, and the entire crown of the tree was igniting very, very quickly with heavy winds. And in fact, when you have those kind of fires, they kind of create their own atmospheric conditions and their own winds, and they would just start racing. That is not anything any firefighter in Louisiana had experience with. And so even though these are fairly remote areas, not highly or densely populated, when they start running like that, they will threaten areas like Maryville, which is why it was evacuated. They threatened DeRidder and Junction and Singer and right now one of the town of Pitkin in Vernon Parish. There's no evacuations and so forth, but the 113 fire with the north wind, that is one that we have to watch very carefully. So as a point I tried to make with the national media earlier this week is, yeah, this is a rural area. It's not densely populated, but every home belongs to some family, and we know that there are some communities out there that are threatened, and it can happen so much faster than most people realize. You can go to bed thinking the fire is 8 miles away from you and going in the opposite direction, and at some point during the night, somebody's going to be getting you out of bed and telling you you've got to leave. And that's why people need to be ready and need to be paying attention, have a backpack, and so forth.
Last question for now. Mitigation. Can anything be done in regards to that hurricane-caused deadfall to reduce that fuel source?
Yeah, I'm going to let the commissioner answer. We know that prescribed burns, when the conditions are right, that's one of the things that they do is they allow for proper management of timberland, forest land, and they remove a lot of that deadfall, a lot of that excess fuel. But quite frankly, there was so much of it down after those hurricanes, and in the southwestern part of the state, because of Laura and Delta and really southeastern Louisiana because of Ida. But normal management practices would have prescribed burns, and you would go in there and you would manage your property. You have your own bulldozers and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure that we're seeing the commercially owned pine plantation stands being managed the way that they were before, and that's something I'm going to ask the commissioner to come and address, because I think it is a good question. And I had Lisa Lewis, who is the Kisatchie Forest Supervisor. She was telling me there was a big difference between the conditions that we're seeing these days in forests as opposed to what we saw 10 and 20 and 30 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. And to answer your question, there are a number of things. You know, in the aftermath of the hurricanes, there was a federal program. It was a reimbursement program for cleaning up the land, but averaging $400 to $500 an acre. But you had to spend that money up front to get reimbursement. That's only a partial reimbursement for you to go and clean it and replant it. And so for many of the landowners that lost from the hurricanes, they simply didn't have the cash to go do it and clean that up. And secondly, you can let time go by and the use of prescribed fire. And the reason that the timber that was down wasn't harvested, when the timber's down from a hurricane, it's generally cracked, and within about 2 to 3 weeks, it's unusable for the current things we use it for. Now, as we move forward, we're looking at new technologies where we can use that cellulose for chemicals, for energy, for wood pellets, and then just logistically moving it from there to another point. So we've got to develop a market for downed and timber such that we can use it. And then finally, the use of prescribed fire. One of the things we're working with specifically on the Kisatchie, we have a signed stewardship agreement. And the work now and the method moving forward for all the national forests is better management using the technology we know that works, which is prescribed fire, which is fire used at an appropriate time, under appropriate conditions, in a controlled manner, not only to burn up any fuel on the ground, any underbrush, but it also helps the environment because it is carbon friendly, and also encouraging private landowners to do so. And some of the pushbacks, you know, whenever there's a prescribed burn, there is smoke and potential there that our landowners are concerned about, you know, because of one, liability and that sort of thing. We have to protect that, but also encourage it. So we have to manage our forest to try to get rid of as much fuel as possible. And the other thing is, if we have more longleaf, with longleaf, as you know, by the time it grows to 100 feet, you've got a very clean space beneath, and fire actually is very beneficial for longleaf. But also, again, more controlled burns so that we don't have wildfires. But when you have these conditions, even in the young plantation pine, you know, stuff that is not yet suitable for prescribed burning, you know, it races across that because it's so hot and it's so dry. So you can do everything you can do, but we are dealing with Mother Nature, unfortunately. And I think as we move forward, we will be working together. One of the things we have discussed is better coordination and more intense coordination between my office and Office of the State Fire Marshal. And also, now I've been here sitting in GOSEP now for going on 16 years, so every type of emergency you can ever imagine, working together. But we need more local coordination with our fire departments. We need to take a hard look. You know, as we said, you know, most in the rural areas, it's volunteer fire departments. We have more than 400. They have limited resources, limited personnel. And so when you start looking at resources and personnel, we need to beef that up. I've asked for before and have not yet received, but I'm going to ask for air tankers that will be part of our aviation fleet, as well as additional dozers, additional equipment, brush trucks. We need to augment what we have and increase personnel, because I would like to tell you that next year we won't face this, but I'm telling you next year we need to be prepared for it. And, you know, as we say, we need to bring people and steel to the fight quickly. And so where we find ourselves in this situation where we were rapidly reaching a state where we could have been overrun, and we brought in additional personnel. We also have compacts. You know, when we bring people in, we have those arrangements made ahead of time. You know, we participate and help people with, you know, out of state, sending our personnel there, and then they come and help us. So we'll be working on all those things. The bottom line is I will be asking a major ask of the legislature next year for more equipment and more personnel and we're going to work towards better coordination between our state agencies and the local fire departments. Thank you.
Thank you all.